The metal corridors of Harmony Station buzzed with activity as beings from dozens of worlds went about their daily business. The massive space station orbited the neutral planet Kepler 442b, serving as a meeting place for the Galactic Confederation. Here, creatures with scales, fur, and crystalline skin worked together to keep peace across the stars. Kim Tae-ho pushed his repair cart down Corridor 7, whistling softly to himself. The 28-year-old human wore the simple gray uniform of a maintenance engineer. His job was not glamorous, but he took pride in keeping the station running smoothly. Tae-ho had always been good with his hands and better with people, which made him well-liked among the station's diverse population. As he rounded a corner near the diplomatic quarters, Tae-ho noticed something unusual. The corridor was completely empty. This was strange because this area was normally busy with diplomats and their staff. He could hear the clicking of nervous conversations in several alien languages coming from behind closed doors. Then he heard it, a deep rumbling sound that seemed to shake the walls. It was followed by the screech of bending metal. Tae-ho grabbed his toolkit and hurried toward the noise. At the end of the corridor, he found the source of the commotion. A massive figure was crouched in front of a damaged ventilation grate, trying unsuccessfully to fit through a doorway that was clearly too small. The being was at least 12 feet tall with 4 powerful arms covered in what looked like living crystal. Blue light pulsed beneath the transparent plates of his skin. This was a Kethmori warrior. Tae-ho had only seen pictures before, but he recognized the species immediately. The Kethmori were famous throughout the galaxy as unstoppable fighters who had never lost a battle. Most species feared them, and with good reason. This one looked like he could tear the station apart with his bare hands. The warrior was clearly frustrated. His lower arms were trying to support his weight, while his upper arms attempted to repair the ventilation system he had accidentally damaged. His movements were careful, almost gentle, despite his enormous size. Tae-ho should have called security. Any normal person would have called security. Instead, he found himself walking forward. "Excuse me," Tae-ho called out in Basic, the common language used throughout the Confederation. "Do you need help with that?" The massive head turned toward him, and Tae-ho found himself looking into 4 golden eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on the warrior's face. The Kethmori froze completely as if he could not believe what he was hearing. "You speak to me?" the warrior asked. His voice was like distant thunder, but there was surprise in it. "Well, yes," Tae-ho said, setting down his toolkit. "You look like you're having trouble with the ventilation system. That's actually my job." The warrior slowly rose to his full height, and Tae-ho had to crane his neck to look at him. The being's crystalline armor caught the station's lights and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. "I am Veltar of the Kethmori," the giant said formally. "I have damaged your station's systems. I will accept punishment." Tae-ho blinked in surprise. "Punishment? It looks like an accident to me. These corridors weren't built for someone your size." He gestured at the cramped space around them. "The whole station is designed for smaller beings. You probably can't help bumping into things." Veltar's golden eyes widened. In his long life, no smaller species had ever spoken to him with such casual understanding. Most beings either cowered in fear or showed aggressive defiance. This human seemed to be doing neither. "You are not afraid," Veltar observed. Tae-ho shrugged. "Should I be? You haven't threatened me or anything. You're just trying to get around the station like everyone else." He knelt down and opened his toolkit. "Now, let me see what we can do about this ventilation grate." As Tae-ho examined the damaged metal, Veltar watched him carefully. The human's movements were precise and confident. He showed no sign of the nervousness that usually infected smaller beings around Kethmori warriors. "My people would call you foolish," Veltar said quietly. "Your people might be right," Tae-ho replied without looking up. "But my grandmother always told me that being kind to strangers costs nothing and sometimes means everything." He pulled out a small welding tool. "Can you move back a bit? I need to fix this joint." Veltar stepped back, still watching in amazement. "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She was," Tae-ho said with a smile. "She also made the best kimchi in 3-star systems, but that's another story." He began welding the damaged grate back into place. "So what brings you to Harmony Station? Diplomatic mission?" There was a long pause. When Veltar finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. "I am between assignments." Tae-ho sensed there was more to the story, but he did not push. Everyone had their secrets, and it was not his business to pry. Instead, he focused on his work. carefully repairing the damage. As he worked, other station inhabitants began to peer around corners. Word was spreading that a human was actually talking to the HFY warrior. Small groups of aliens whispered to each other in the distance, too afraid to come closer but too curious to leave. "There," Tejo said, stepping back to admire his work. "Good as new. The air should flow properly now." Veltar examined the repair with his 4 eyes. The work was precise and clean. "You have skill," he said. "Thanks. It's what I do." Tejo began packing up his tools. "If you need help getting around the station, I could show you some routes that might be easier for someone your size. The main corridors have higher ceilings." "You would do this?" Veltar asked, clearly surprised again. "Sure, I know this station better than almost anyone. It's no trouble." Veltar was quiet for a moment. In all his years as a warrior, no one had ever offered him help without expecting something in return. The concept was so foreign to him that he struggled to understand it. "I accept your offer," he said finally, "but I do not understand why you make it." Tejo finished packing his toolkit and stood up. "Maybe because everyone deserves to have a friend in a strange place. And this station can be pretty strange, even for those of us who live here." As they walked down the corridor together, the other station inhabitants scattered like leaves before a storm. The sight of a tiny human walking beside a massive HFY warrior was unprecedented. Some aliens activated their communication devices, probably calling friends to tell them what they were seeing. Tejo chatted easily as they walked, pointing out various features of the station and explaining how different areas worked. Veltar listened carefully, asking occasional questions. The human's manner was so natural and friendly that the warrior found himself relaxing for the first time since arriving at the station. When they reached the central hub, where the main corridors met, Tejo stopped. "This is probably the best place for you to navigate from," he said. "All the major sections connect here, and the ceilings are highest." "Thank you, Kim Tejo," Veltar said, remembering the name from their introduction. "Just Tejo is fine," the human replied with a grin, "and you're welcome. If you need anything else, just ask around for the maintenance guy. Everyone knows where to find me." As Tejo walked away, pushing his cart toward the next repair job, Veltar stood in the central hub and watched him go. For the first time in months, the exiled warrior felt something other than loneliness and shame. Perhaps this strange little human was right. Perhaps everyone did deserve to have a friend in a strange place. Around the hub, other aliens continued to stare at Veltar from a safe distance. But now, instead of seeing just a terrifying warrior, some of them began to wonder about the being who had spoken so quietly with the kind human engineer. It was a small beginning, but it was a beginning nonetheless. 3 days had passed since Tejo first met Veltar, and he found himself looking forward to their chance encounters around the station. The HFY warriors seemed to appear wherever Tejo was working, always with some small technical question or observation about the station's systems. Today, Tejo was repairing a broken lighting panel in the recreation area when he heard familiar heavy footsteps behind him. "Good morning, Veltar," he said without turning around. "Good morning, Tejo," the deep voice replied. "I hope I am not disturbing your work." "Not at all." Tejo climbed down from his ladder and smiled at his unusual friend. "What brings you to the recreation area?" Veltar looked around at the various games and entertainment devices designed for different species. "I was curious about how other beings spend their free time. HFY do not have recreation areas." "Really? What do you do for fun?" "We train. We meditate on honor and duty. We prepare for battle." Veltar paused. "I am beginning to think we may be missing something." Tejo chuckled. "Come on, let me show you around. Maybe we can find something you'd enjoy." As they walked through the recreation area, Tejo explained the various activities. There were holodecks for virtual experiences, gaming tables for species that enjoyed competition, and quiet meditation spaces for those who preferred solitude. Veltar examined everything with careful attention, asking thoughtful questions. "Tejo," a sharp voice called from behind them. They turned to see Park Da-un, the chief of station security, approaching with quick, angry steps. She was a stern woman in her 40s who took her job very seriously. "Chief Park," Tejo said pleasantly. "How are you today?" "I need to speak with you," she said, glancing nervously at Veltar. "Privately. Anything you need to say to me, you can say in front of my friend." Tejo replied calmly. Park Da-un's eyes widened. Friend? Teho, do you understand what you're doing? This is a Kethmori warrior. His people have conquered entire star systems. His name is Veltar, Teho said firmly, and he's been nothing but polite since he arrived. Veltar watched the exchange with interest. He was used to fear and hostility, but seeing someone defend him was entirely new. You don't understand the danger, Park Da-un continued. The Kethmori are killers. They don't make friends with other species. Well, this one does, Teho said. Maybe you should give him a chance before judging him. Park Da-un stared at both of them for a moment, then shook her head. Just be careful, Teho. If anything happens, nothing will happen, Teho assured her. Veltar is a good person. After the security chief left, Veltar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. She's not wrong about my people, but she's wrong about you, Teho said simply. They continued their tour of the recreation area in comfortable silence. When they reached the dining section, Teho had an idea. Are you hungry? I was going to grab some lunch. Veltar tilted his massive head. I have been eating in my quarters. The dining areas are not designed for Kethmori. Nonsense, Teho said. Let's figure something out. The dining hall was nearly empty, which was fortunate because Veltar's presence would have caused quite a stir during busy hours. Teho found a table in a corner where the ceiling was highest and moved several chairs out of the way. This should work, he said, settling into his seat. Veltar carefully lowered himself onto the floor beside the table, his head still well above Teho's. This is highly irregular. The best meals usually are, Teho grinned, activating the table's food dispenser as they ate. Teho learned more about Kethmori culture. Veltar explained that his people lived in great crystal cities on a world with heavy gravity. They were organized into warrior clans, each dedicated to specific aspects of combat and honor. It sounds beautiful, Teho said, listening to descriptions of the crystal spires and floating gardens. It was my home, Veltar said quietly. I will not see it again. Why not? Veltar was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with pain. I disobeyed orders. My clan commander told me to destroy a colony of non-combatants who were supporting our enemies with supplies. I refused. Teho nearly choked on his food. You refused to kill innocent people? Yes, my commander said they were not innocent, that anyone who helped our enemies deserved death. But when I saw them, they were families, children, scientists and farmers who only wanted to live in peace. Veltar's golden eyes dimmed. I could not do it. So what happened? I was declared dishonored and exiled. In the eyes of my people, showing mercy to enemies is the greatest weakness a warrior can display. Teho sat back in his chair, processing this information. Let me get this straight. You were thrown out of your home because you refused to murder innocent people. That is correct. Then your people are idiots, Teho said bluntly. Veltar's four eyes widened in shock. No one had ever spoken about the Kethmori with such casual disrespect. But instead of anger, he felt something else. Relief, perhaps. Or gratitude. You do not think I am weak? He asked. Weak? Teho laughed. Veltar, do you know how much strength it takes to stand up for what's right when everyone around you says you're wrong? Most people just follow orders, even bad ones. It takes real courage to say no. Veltar had never thought of his actions in those terms. Among his people, mercy was considered a character flaw, something to be overcome through training and discipline. Your people see things differently, he observed. Some of us do, others. Teho shrugged. Well, you met Chief Park. Fear makes people stupid sometimes. They continued talking as they finished their meal. Teho told stories about his grandmother, who had taught him to see the good in everyone. Veltar shared memories of his homeworld, carefully avoiding the painful subject of his exile. As they prepared to leave, a young human diplomat named Yoon Si-woo approached their table. He was well-dressed and carried himself with the confidence of someone who thought he was important. Excuse me, Si-woo said to Teho. I'm Yoon Si-woo from the Diplomatic Corps. I couldn't help but notice your association with our Kethmori guest. His name is Veltar, Teho said, already not liking where this was going. Of course, I was wondering if you might be willing to discuss the nature of your relationship with him. The diplomatic implications could be quite significant. Veltar watched this exchange with growing understanding. Even among humans, it seemed, His presence was seen as an opportunity for political gain. "There are no implications," Tejo said firmly. "We're friends. That's it." "But surely you understand the historic nature of this friendship," Siwu pressed. "A human and a Kethamori working together." "We're not working together on anything except being decent to each other," Tejo interrupted. "And if you'll excuse us, we have better things to do than discuss diplomatic implications." He stood up and gestured for Veltar to follow him. As they left the dining hall, the warrior looked down at his small friend. "You defend me again," he observed. "That's what friends do," Tejo replied. "I am beginning to understand this concept of friendship," Veltar said thoughtfully. "It is not something my people practice." "Maybe that's their loss," Tejo suggested. As they walked through the station's corridors, other inhabitants continued to stare at them with a mixture of fear and curiosity. But Tejo noticed something new. Some of the younger aliens seemed more curious than afraid. A few even nodded politely as they passed. Perhaps friendship really was contagious, he thought. And perhaps the galaxy needed more of it. The alarm sirens began wailing at 0347 station time, jolting everyone from sleep. Red lights flashed in the corridors as the emergency broadcast echoed through Harmony Station's speakers. "All personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Tejo rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his emergency kit. As a maintenance engineer, his job during crises was to keep critical systems running. He had just stepped into the corridor when he nearly collided with Veltar, who was moving toward the command center with surprising speed for someone his size. "What's happening?" Tejo called out, jogging to keep up with the warrior's long strides. "Pirates," Veltar replied grimly. "They have attacked a civilian transport. Families are aboard." They reached the command center to find controlled chaos. Commander Nalthis, a tall reptilian being with scales that changed color with her emotions, was coordinating the response. Her scales were currently flashing deep red, indicating high stress. "Status report," she hissed to her tactical officer. The transport New Horizon was carrying 53 civilians, including 12 children when it was attacked, the officer replied. "The pirates disabled their engines and are demanding ransom." "Our response?" Commander Nalthis asked. "Negative. Their ship has advanced shielding that our weapons cannot penetrate. They're using technology we haven't seen before." Tejo felt his heart sink. Among the civilians on that transport was Lee Hyojin, an 8-year-old girl whose parents worked in the station's research division. He had helped fix her family's quarters just last week, and she had thanked him with a drawing of the station. "What about a boarding action?" Veltar stepped forward, his massive frame towering over the command staff. Every head in the room turned toward him. Commander Nalthis's scales shifted to yellow, the color of surprise. "The Kethmori speaks wisdom," she said slowly. "But their ship's design makes boarding extremely difficult. The airlocks are heavily defended, and the internal passages are narrow." "I can fight in narrow spaces," Veltar said. "Not these spaces," the tactical officer replied, bringing up a holographic display of the pirate ship. "The passages are barely wide enough for human-sized beings. Someone your size would be trapped." Tejo studied the display carefully. The ship was indeed designed for smaller beings, probably to make boarding actions exactly like this one nearly impossible. But as he looked at the technical specifications, an idea began to form. "I could go with him," he said quietly. The entire command center fell silent. Commander Nalthis's scales turned purple, indicating confusion. "You?" she asked. "Look at these passages," Tejo pointed to the display. "They're too small for Veltar alone, but perfect for someone my size. I could clear the way, disable their internal defenses, maybe even get to the hostages." "You're a maintenance engineer," Commander Nalthis protested. "You have no combat training." "No, but I know systems. I can probably disable their ship from the inside better than anyone." Tejo looked at Veltar. "We make a good team." Veltar's golden eyes met Tejo's brown ones. The human was offering to risk his life to help strangers, just as Veltar had once done. But this was different. Tejo was not a warrior. "It is too dangerous," Veltar said. "I cannot ask you to." "You're not asking," Tejo interrupted. "I'm volunteering." "This is madness." Chief Park Da-Yun had arrived and was staring at them both. "Tejo, you can't be serious." "Those are real people over there," Tejo said firmly. "Including Hyojin and her family. I can't just stand here and do nothing." Commander Naltis studied both volunteers for a long moment. Her scales slowly shifted to blue, the color of deep thought. "Very well," she said finally. "But this mission is entirely voluntary. If either of you wishes to withdraw—" "We do not," Veltar said, speaking for both of them. As they prepared for the mission, Tejo tried not to think about how terrified he actually was. He had never been in a real fight, let alone a life-or-death battle with space pirates, but every time doubt crept in, he thought about Hyojin's bright smile and her carefully drawn picture of the station. Veltar armed himself with traditional Kethmori weapons, energy blades that could cut through almost anything, and a personal shield generator. For Tejo, the equipment options were more limited. He settled for a basic energy pistol and his engineering tools, which might prove more useful than weapons anyway. "You understand," Veltar said as they suited up. "Once we board their ship, there will be no retreat. Pirates do not take prisoners." "I understand," Tejo replied, checking his gear one more time. "Then why do you do this? These people are not your family." Tejo paused in his preparations. "No, they're not. But that little girl drew me a picture. Her parents always say hello when I pass them in the corridors. They're part of my community, you know, and communities look out for each other." Veltar nodded slowly. This was another human concept he was beginning to understand. Among the Kethmori, you fought for your clan and your honor. These humans seemed to fight for anyone who needed help. Their shuttle approached the pirate ship under stealth conditions. The vessel was sleek and predatory, built for speed and surprise attacks. Weapon ports bristled along its hull, and sensor arrays swept the surrounding space for threats. "Remember," Tejo said as they prepared to board, "I go first to clear the passages. You follow as close as you can. We stick together no matter what." "Agreed," Veltar rumbled. The boarding was easier than expected. The pirates had not anticipated anyone being foolish enough to attempt it, so their external defenses were focused on the station's ships. Tejo's engineering skills allowed him to quickly override the airlock systems. Once inside, however, things became more difficult. The ship's corridors were indeed narrow, forcing Veltar to move in an uncomfortable crouch. Pirates appeared at every junction, armed with energy weapons and shouting in a language neither Tejo nor Veltar recognized, but they worked together like they had been a team for years. Tejo's small size allowed him to slip through maintenance passages and surprise pirates from behind. When he got into trouble, Veltar's strength and combat skill cleared the way. The humans' technical knowledge disabled security systems, while the warriors' weapons dealt with more direct threats. They fought their way deeper into the ship, following the sound of frightened voices. The hostages were being held in the cargo bay, guarded by the pirates' leader, a massive, scarred being with too many arms and a reputation for cruelty. "Two more heroes come to die," the pirate leader snarled when he saw them. "Let the families go," Veltar said, his energy blades humming to life. "The mighty Kethmori warrior," the pirate sneered. "I know your reputation. But what is this little creature beside you? Your pet?" "He is my friend," Veltar replied simply. The battle that followed was brief but intense. The pirate leader was skilled and vicious, but he had never faced opponents who fought as a coordinated team. While he focused on Veltar's obvious threat, Tejo circled around and disabled the cage holding the hostages. "Run," he shouted to the families. "Get to the shuttle." Among the fleeing civilians, Tejo saw Hyojin clutching her mother's hand. The little girl looked back at him with wide, grateful eyes before disappearing around a corner. In the end, it was teamwork that won the day. Veltar engaged the pirate leader directly, while Tejo sabotaged the ship's power systems. When the lights went out, the warrior finished the fight in the darkness. As they made their way back to the shuttle with the rescued hostages, Tejo realized something had changed. The other station inhabitants were looking at them differently. Not with fear or curiosity, but with respect. And waiting for them in the shuttle bay was someone unexpected. Another Kethmori warrior, even larger than Veltar, with armor that marked him as a high-ranking executioner. "Veltar of the Kethmori," the newcomer said formally. "I am Corvex. I have come to bring you home for your punishment." But Corvex's golden eyes were not focused on Veltar. They were studying the rescued families, especially little Hyojin, who was still holding tightly to her mother's hand. For the first time in his life, an executioner was beginning to question his orders. The news of the rescue spread through Harmony Station like wildfire. Within hours, every being on the station knew that a human maintenance engineer and an exiled Kethmori warrior had saved 53 lives from space pirates. The story grew more dramatic with each telling, but the core remained the same. Two unlikely friends had risked everything for strangers. Taeho tried to return to his normal routine, but it proved impossible. Everywhere he went, beings stopped him to express their gratitude or amazement. Some of the same aliens who had once crossed corridors to avoid Veltar now approached to thank both of them. The most touching moment came when Hyojin and her parents visited his quarters. The little girl had drawn a new picture, this one showing Taeho and Veltar standing together with the rescued families. "You saved us," she said in her clear, young voice, offering him the drawing. "We all saved each other," Taeho replied, accepting the picture with a smile. But not everyone was pleased with the attention. 3 days after the rescue, Taeho was summoned to Commander Naltis's office. When he arrived, he found several important-looking beings waiting for him, including Admiral Cho Min-ho from Earth Command. "Taeho," Commander Nalthis said, her scales a neutral green. "Please sit. We need to discuss recent events." The young engineer took a seat, feeling suddenly nervous. Admiral Cho was a stern man in his 60s with silver hair and hard eyes. He had not gotten to his position by being patient with subordinates who caused problems. "Do you understand the situation you've created?" Admiral Cho asked without preamble. "Sir?" Taeho replied, confused. "Your friendship with the Kethmori has attracted attention throughout the galaxy. The Confederation Council is in emergency session because of your actions." Yoon Si-woo, the diplomat, leaned forward eagerly. "This could be the beginning of a new era in human-Kethmori relations. Think of the opportunities for trade, cultural exchange, military cooperation. Or," Admiral Cho interrupted, "it could be the beginning of a war." Taeho felt his stomach drop. "War?" Commander Nalthis activated a holographic display showing several Kethmori warships approaching the station. "The Kethmori Empire has demanded that we surrender both you and Veltar immediately. They claim you have corrupted their warrior with alien concepts." "That's ridiculous," Taeho protested. "I haven't corrupted anyone. We're just friends." "The Kethmori don't believe in friendship between species," Admiral Cho explained. "To them, Veltar's actions represent a fundamental challenge to their entire way of life. They see you as a threat to their cultural purity." "What kind of threat could I possibly be?" "I'm a maintenance engineer." Yoon Si-woo smiled. "You're much more than that now. You're a symbol, proof that humans and Kethmori can work together. Other species are starting to reconsider their own prejudices." It was true. In the days since the rescue, Taeho had noticed changes around the station. Beings who had never spoken before were having conversations. Old enemies were finding common ground. The rigid social barriers that had always existed between species were beginning to crack. "The Kethmori Empire doesn't want change," Commander Nalthis said. "They've built their entire civilization on the idea that they are superior to all other species. Your friendship with Veltar threatens that belief." "So what happens now?" Taeho asked. "The Confederation Council is debating several options," Admiral Cho replied. "Some want to surrender you both to avoid conflict. Others believe this is an opportunity to stand up to Kethmori aggression once and for all." "And what do you want?" Taeho looked directly at the Admiral. Cho was quiet for a moment. "I want to protect human interests, but I'm beginning to think those interests might be best served by supporting you." Before anyone could respond, Chief Park Da-yun entered the office looking grim. "Commander, we have a situation. The Kethmori executioner Korvex is requesting a private meeting with Veltar. He says it's a matter of honor." Commander Nalthis's scales shifted to yellow. "Where?" "Conference room 7. He specifically requested that the human Taeho be present as well." The meeting was unlike anything Taeho had ever experienced. Korvex was even more imposing than Veltar, with additional crystal formations on his armor that marked his high rank. His 4 golden eyes studied both of them carefully before he spoke. "I came here to execute a traitor," he said in formal Kethmori, "but what I have seen confuses me." "What have you seen?" Veltar asked quietly. "I have seen the families you saved. I have watched the small human child draw pictures of your heroism. I have observed how other species speak of your actions with respect rather than fear." Korvex paused. These are not the actions of a dishonored warrior. Teho decided to speak up. With respect, Corvex, what exactly did Veltar do that was so wrong? He saved innocent lives. How is that dishonorable? The executioner's attention focused on him. You question Kethmori law, small human? I question any law that calls mercy a crime, Teho replied firmly. Corvex was silent for a long moment. My orders are clear. Veltar must return to face punishment for his defiance. And if he refuses, Teho asked, then I must carry out the sentence here. Veltar stood up, towering over both his friend and his executioner. I will not return. I've found something here worth protecting. The human, Corvex asked. The friendship, Veltar corrected. The idea that beings can care for each other across the boundaries of species and culture. This is not weakness, this is strength. Corvex studied them both for another long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began removing his ceremonial armor. What are you doing? Veltar asked. If friendship is strength, Corvex said slowly, then perhaps I have been weak my entire life. The next few hours brought a cascade of surprising developments. Word spread that a Kethmori executioner had defied his orders to protect Veltar and Teho. Other species began to take notice, and delegations started arriving at the station to show their support. The Rillan ambassador, whose people had been enemies of the Kethmori for centuries, made a public statement supporting Veltar's right to asylum. The crystalline Vorthak, who rarely involved themselves in galactic politics, sent a message declaring that friendship was the highest form of honor. Even more surprising were the messages that began arriving from young Kethmori throughout the Empire. Veltar's story had spread among the warrior clans, and some of the younger generation were beginning to question the old ways. But the Kethmori High Command was not amused. They declared both Veltar and Corvex to be traitors, and sent a battle fleet to Harmony Station with orders to retrieve them by force if necessary. As reports came in of the approaching ships, Teho found himself in the uncomfortable position of being at the center of an interstellar incident. He sat in his quarters looking at Hyojin's drawings and wondering how a simple act of kindness had led to this. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. When it opened, he was surprised to see not just Veltar but Corvex as well. We need to talk, Veltar said. About what? About what happens when the fleet arrives, Corvex replied. And about whether friendship is truly worth fighting for. As they sat together in Teho's small quarters, three beings from different worlds planning to stand against an empire, the human engineer realized something important. The galaxy was changing, and it was changing because someone had decided that being kind to a stranger was more important than being afraid. Now they just had to survive long enough to see what that change would bring. The Kethmori battle fleet arrived at Harmony Station like a storm made of metal and crystal. 12 massive warships took positions around the station, their weapons powered but not yet firing. The largest ship, the Honor's Edge, positioned itself directly in front of the station's main docking bay. Teho stood in the observation deck, watching the imposing ships through the transparent aluminum windows. Each vessel was a work of art, covered in the same crystalline armor as Kethmori warriors. They gleamed in the light of the distant sun, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Impressive, are they not? Veltar said, joining him at the window. They're amazing, Teho admitted, but also kind of scary. They are meant to be. My people believe that fear is the foundation of respect. Corvex approached from behind them, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. The fleet commander is demanding our immediate surrender. She has given the station 1 hour to comply. Or, Teho asked, or she will take us by force. The three unlikely friends stood together in silence, watching the fleet. Around them, other station inhabitants were also looking out the windows, their faces showing various degrees of fear and concern. We could surrender, Teho said quietly. I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of this. No, Veltar said firmly. We have done nothing wrong. To surrender now would be to admit that friendship is a crime. The Kethmori Empire has never retreated from a position, Corvex added. If we give in to their demands, nothing will change. Other species will continue to live in fear. Before Teho could respond, Commander Nalthus's voice echoed through the station's communication system. All station personnel and guests, please. Report to the Central Assembly Hall for an emergency gathering. The assembly hall was packed with beings from dozens of different species. Taeho had never seen so many different life forms in one place. There were the crystalline Vorthak, the fluid Aquarians, the insectoid Zephyrians, and many others he didn't recognize. Commander Nalthus stood on the main platform, her scales a deep blue color that indicated serious determination. Behind her were Admiral Cho, Yoon Siwoo, and several other human officials. Citizens of Harmony Station, the commander began, we face an unprecedented situation. The Kethmori Empire has demanded that we surrender 3 individuals who have committed no crime, except the act of friendship. A murmur ran through the crowd. Taeho felt hundreds of eyes turning toward him, Veltar and Corvex. However, Commander Nalthus continued, we have received something even more unprecedented. Messages of support from across the galaxy. The main display activated, showing dozens of communication channels. As they watched, messages poured in from star systems throughout the Confederation. Species that had never cooperated before were standing together to support the right of friendship across racial lines. The Andromedan Council declares its support for the principles of interspecies friendship. One message read, the free colonies stand with Harmony Station, said another, but the most surprising messages were coming from within the Kethmori Empire itself. Young warriors from various clans were sending secret communications, expressing their support for Veltar's actions. It seems, Admiral Cho said, stepping forward, that your friendship has inspired something larger than any of us expected. Suddenly, the station shook as if hit by a massive impact. The lights flickered and emergency alarms began to sound. What was that? Someone shouted. Chief Park Dayun's voice crackled over the communication system. Unknown ships are engaging the Kethmori fleet. I repeat, unknown ships are engaging the enemy. The main display switched to an external view and everyone gasped. A ragtag collection of ships from various species had arrived and were fighting alongside each other against the Kethmori fleet. Humans, Rillans, Vorthak, and others who had been enemies for generations were working together. They came. Taeho whispered in amazement. They actually came to help. But even with the unexpected support, the battle was not going well. The Kethmori ships were more advanced and better armed than their opponents. Within minutes, several of the supporting vessels were damaged or destroyed. We have to do something, Taeho said, turning to his friends. What can we do? Veltar asked. We are not warriors with fleets. It was then that little Hyojin stepped forward from the crowd. The 8-year-old girl walked up to the platform with the confidence that only children possess. Excuse me, she said in her clear voice, looking up at Commander Nalthus. The entire assembly hall fell silent. The child looked so small standing there, but her voice carried to every corner of the room. I want to thank Veltar and Taeho for saving my family, she said. And I want to tell the scary ships outside that friendship is not bad, it's good. Her simple words seemed to unlock something in the assembled beings. One by one, other rescued civilians stepped forward. Parents with their children, elderly beings, researchers, and workers. Each one spoke briefly about how the friendship between a human and a Kethmori had touched their lives. But the most powerful moment came when children from a dozen different species joined hands around Hyojin. They didn't speak the same languages or share the same biology, but they understood something that their parents had forgotten. Beings were just beings, no matter what they looked like. The image was broadcast throughout the galaxy, including to the Kethmori fleet. On the bridge of the Honor's Edge, Fleet Commander Tar Asha watched the transmission with growing unease. She had come here to punish traitors, but what she saw was something she had no experience with. Pure, innocent gratitude. Commander. Her. Tactical officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Crystal Dawn. The Crystal Dawn? Tarasha's 4 eyes widened. That was Corvex's personal ship, but it should have been empty. The transmission activated, revealing the face of Corvex himself, speaking from Harmony Station. Fellow warriors, he said formally, I speak to you as one who has served the Empire faithfully for 30 years. I came here to execute a traitor, but I have discovered something that changes everything." On the screen behind him, the image of the children holding hands continued to play. "This is not weakness," Corvex continued. "This is strength of a kind we have never understood. These small beings from different worlds stand together without fear, without hatred, without the need to prove their superiority. They simply care for each other." On several of the Kethmori ships, younger warriors began to lower their weapons. They had grown up hearing stories of honor and glory, but this was the first time they had seen true courage. The courage to care for others. The turning point came when Veltar himself requested permission to address the fleet. Standing in the assembly hall with Teho beside him, he spoke directly to his former people. "Warriors of the Empire," he said, his deep voice carrying across space. "I do not ask for forgiveness. I ask for understanding. The human beside me showed me that true honor comes not from conquest, but from protection. Not from fear, but from friendship." Teho stepped forward, his small human voice somehow carrying just as much weight as Veltar's massive presence. "I'm just a maintenance engineer," he said simply. "I fix things that are broken. But maybe friendship can fix things too. Maybe it can fix the broken parts of how we see each other." Fleet Commander Tarasha found herself facing a choice she had never expected to make. Her orders were clear: retrieve the traitors and restore Kethmori honor. But looking at the transmission, seeing the rescued children and the unlikely friendship that had saved them, she began to question what honor really meant. The decision came when her own tactical officer, a young warrior named Zenthar, spoke up. "Commander," he said quietly, "my sister was on that transport. She was one of the families they saved." Tarasha turned to look at him in surprise. "Your sister?" "She married a researcher from another species. The family moved to the outer colonies for his work." Zenthar's voice was thick with emotion. "When I heard about the pirate attack, I thought I had lost her forever. But these two, this human and this dishonored warrior, they brought her home." Around the bridge, other warriors began to murmur. Several of them had family or friends among the rescued civilians. The abstract concept of honor suddenly became very personal. "Stand down all weapons," Tarasha ordered quietly. "Commander?" her weapons officer asked in confusion. "I said stand down all weapons," she repeated more firmly this time. The battle ended not with destruction, but with communication. Representatives from the supporting fleets were invited aboard Kethmori ships for the first time in galactic history. The process was awkward and sometimes tense, but it was a beginning. Over the following days, something unprecedented happened. The Kethmori High Command, faced with widespread support for Veltar's actions and growing dissent within their own ranks, agreed to a compromise. Veltar and Corvex would be pardoned, but they would serve as ambassadors to other species rather than returning to their traditional roles. Harmony Station was renamed Unity Station, becoming the first truly integrated facility where beings from all species could live and work together as equals. Teho was promoted to Chief of Interspecies Relations, though he kept his maintenance tools and continued to fix things around the station. The changes were not instant or universal,